So will China phones ever beat and overtake Samsung and Apple? Well, the short answer is no, and here are the reasons why. So to give you guys a bit of context, here are the 2017 numbers for smartphone sales. Samsung shipped 317 million units, Apple shipped 215 million units, Huawei shipped 154 million units, and surprisingly, Apple actually beat Xiaomi, shipping 111 million units, while Xiaomi only shipped around 92 million units. And as you can see from these numbers over here, even Huawei, the biggest Chinese smartphone seller, shipped half the amount of phones that Samsung shipped, and a good 60 to 70 million less units than what Apple has shipped as well. And obviously Xiaomi and Apple are even farther behind than that. So I've been thinking about this issue for a long time. Will Chinese phones ever catch up? So in my opinion, eventually it is a possibility that Chinese phones will catch up with, Samsung and Apple, but in the near future, it's probably not going to happen. And in this video, I'm going to give you guys the reasons why Chinese phones will probably not catch up with Samsung and Apple in the near future. And then I'll give you a couple of reasons why they actually might. Number one, Chinese phones have a very low international brand awareness. They might be very well known. For example, Huawei, Xiaomi, Vivo, Oppo, they're very well known in China and maybe a couple of other Asian countries. But if you're talking about, international brand awareness, everywhere on the globe, everyone knows Samsung, everybody knows Apple, I think everybody knows LG, even though they might not be that popular. HTC maybe, and a couple of other manufacturers, but not a lot of people know who Huawei and Xiaomi is, who are two of the most popular worldwide Chinese brands. And these Chinese companies are working to change that. However, there are actually even some places in the world where there might be a negative brand awareness for Chinese phones. Recently, Huawei was actually banned from entering the US market in a big way. And the reason given was spying. USA was afraid of the Chinese government using Huawei to spy on Chinese phones. And again, whether that's true or not, it does give all Chinese phones here a very bad image that, they're all spying phones. And whether or not that's true, Huawei here is locked out of the third biggest smartphone market in the world, behind India and China. And that's not a trivial thing to be locked out of. In addition, these Chinese brands actually have a lot of trouble getting market share in places like Japan and Korea, where, Korea is dominated obviously by Samsung, and Japan is actually dominated by Apple. These companies have less than 5% or maybe 5% at max market share in those countries, which is pretty abysmal. They are doing pretty well in developing countries. Number two is market saturation. So in many of the developed countries, the smartphone market is pretty saturated, and they have more income at their disposal to spend on more expensive smartphones. However, in order to force their way into these markets, Huawei and Xiaomi both have developed strategies that involve undercutting their competitors severely by having no profit smartphones. For example, the Honor line or the Redmi line, where they make very little or no profit in order to give you an amazing smartphone for an amazing price. And again, I'm not complaining, I absolutely love it. It really makes it so that, the Redmi devices are great value for money. However, this type of strategy severely eats away at your overall profit margin, which again impacts your ability to do research and development as well. And the other problem of severely undercutting your competitors by having, no profit smartphones like the Honor for Huawei and the Redmi for Xiaomi, it really forces consumers into a more price conscious mindset where they're not willing to pay as much. And as a result, you don't make as much profit off each cell phone. And the even bigger risk is the risk of commoditizing your cell phone. Now, to those of you who don't know what commoditization is, a commodity is, it's more easy to give you guys an example. A commodity is like rice or sugar, right? You don't really care what brand your rice is. You don't specifically buy Samsung rice over Apple rice. You just buy rice. It doesn't really matter. And as a result, consumers who buy commodities are not as inclined to pay more for a certain brand. They just go for the cheapest. And as a result, it's a race to the bottom. And the price of, rice is not dictated by what Apple says they want to charge for their rice, or, what Xiaomi wants to charge for their rice. It's by what the customer is willing to pay, because they're not willing to pay extra money for an Apple branded rice. If there was, that'd be pretty funny. And as a result, brands lose their power and you pretty much buy the cheapest rice you can find. So that's the risk that smartphones have if you start, going to a race to a bottom. People stop caring what brand you are and they just want to get the cheapest cell phone that works well. And as a result, you cannot charge as much, and you're really at the mercy of market forces to dictate the price of the cell phone. Number 4, China phones don't have a strong fan base. And I know you guys are gonna start protesting this point, but hear me out for a little bit. It's true, Huawei and Xiaomi both have huge fan bases. For example, Xiaomi, they have a lot of people who are absolutely in love with the MIUI interface and will do anything and want to live the Xiaomi life, get Xiaomi rice cookers, Xiaomi speakers, Xiaomi phones, Xiaomi bicycles, Xiaomi coats. But their fan base is still nowhere near as big as Apple and Samsung. Just think about the term that people commonly use to describe Apple fanboys, iSheep. That is such a common term to use now, and it honestly describes quite a few people as well who will buy Apple no matter what. And to be honest, Samsung fanboys aren't that different as well. You've got a huge fan base, and you guys remember the Galaxy Note 7 exploding? So shortly after that, the CEO of Samsung, I think, was put in jail for corruption charges. And if you think about it, right after that, the Galaxy Note 8, Galaxy S8 were best-selling phones ever. Samsung fans did not care about the exploding bit, and they did not really care about Samsung's CEO getting put in jail. They forgot about that very quickly. And that's the kind of fan base you want for your company in order to really take advantage of that fan base to your company's best interest. And just think about Xiaomi's entry into India for a little bit. People in India want the best value for money, and that's why they're going for Xiaomi. But if Huawei comes in and undercuts Xiaomi, they're not going to stick with Xiaomi because they like Xiaomi. They're just going to go straight to Huawei because Huawei gives you a cheaper, let's say Honor 7C. That could be a better value for money, and they're just going to go straight there. There really isn't any brand loyalty when you're looking at the race to the bottom. People just want the cheapest for the best. Number 5, let's say, for example, Chinese phones start outselling, Samsung or Apple. Let's take, for example, Huawei or Xiaomi. Let's say either one of those companies starts outselling Samsung or Apple. The thing is, they're still not going to make as much money as Samsung or Apple just because the profit per phone for, Xiaomi and Huawei is way, way lower than what you have in Samsung or Apple. So if you recall at the beginning of the video, Apple sold about 317 million smartphones, and calculated their average profit per smartphone is about $151. So let's multiply that. 317 times 151, that's $47 billion in profit. That's a lot. Now, let's look at Huawei's profit. Huawei's profit is estimated to be around $15 a smartphone. Again, you have to remember that they sell very expensive phones like the Huawei Mate 10 Pro, which is going to have huge profit margins similar to what you have in Apple. But then you also have the Honor line, which makes next to no money. So if you balance those two out, the estimated profit based on research data is about $15. So Huawei sold about 151 million phones in 2017. So 151 times $15 is $2.26 billion. That's 20 times lower than what Apple made. And as a result, Apple can invest more money into hiring better people, getting better equipment, investing more into R&D, which all play a factor in helping Apple stay ahead of the curve. However, it's not all doom and gloom for Chinese companies. Here are some reasons why Chinese companies might actually have a leg up over Samsung and Apple. So Samsung and Apple are losing ground real fast in developing countries like India, Philippines, Indonesia, and a couple of other places as well. And let's take India for example. Xiaomi just recently surpassed Samsung as the largest phone manufacturer in India, which is no small feat. Now, if you recall back to the commodity bit, phones are not a commodity yet. So for now, you can still charge more if you have a brand that's trusted like Apple or Samsung. So there is still value for Xiaomi and Huawei to start getting users onto their Xiaomi phones. There is incentive for users to continue staying with Xiaomi phones. And let's say someone has a cheap Xiaomi phone and they want to upgrade. They might look at a more expensive Xiaomi phone like the Mi Note 3 that I have right here. That could be a very real possibility. And that is definitely one of the reasons why, Xiaomi and Huawei are gunning so hard for India and trying to make that their next battleground. And finally, the last reason why these Chinese phones might actually be winning is because they're innovating very well with considerably less R&D money. So let's take, for example, way back when the Mi Mix was announced. The Mi Mix was a concept phone and it was absolutely stunning. Even MKBHD reviewed it and pretty much everybody was so impressed with the phone. Now, if you think to 2018, Vivo released at MWC the Vivo Apex, another concept phone. Beautiful, looks amazing, and again, is a step in the right direction in terms of innovation. And Samsung and Apple pour a lot of money into their cell phones, but it really looks like these small Chinese companies are innovating very, very well. So what do you think about this video? Do you think Chinese companies will ever catch up to Samsung or Apple? And if you do think they will catch up, let me know what kind of time frame we're looking at. Are we looking at 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 500 years, that could be a possibility as well. Let me know in the comments down below. And after you're watching this video, highly recommend you check the description down below for a link to a giveaway. I have one every single month. Click there to enter. It takes 5 seconds and it's free. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next